Hey everyone, welcome. In this explainer, we're going to break down the incredible story of how computers went from these room-sized giants to personal tools you could actually have on your desk. And we're basing this on the research material of Dr. Savindra S.G. And really, we've designed this whole explainer with you, the educators, in mind, to help you share this amazing story.
So let's kick things off with the big question that really got this whole revolution started. It wasn't just one single magical invention that suddenly made personal computers a reality. It was more like a perfect storm, right? A bunch of crucial ingredients all coming together at exactly the right moment.
So, here's what we're going to cover. We'll trace this whole journey from just a handful of electronic parts all the way to the big platform battles that honestly still shape our world today. All right, let's get into it.
First up, let's talk about the recipe for revolution. What were the key ingredients that made the personal computer not just a possibility, but pretty much inevitable?
Yeah, you can really think of it like baking a cake. First, you need a brain, right? That was the single-chip CPU, things like the famous Intel 8080. Then you need memory to hold information, affordable RAM and ROM. You gotta have storage to save your stuff, which at first was cassette tapes, then floppy disks. And finally, you need a way to actually see what you're doing. And the genius solution for that? Just plug it into a regular TV set. The key was when all four of these things got cheap enough at the same time, that's when the magic could really happen. Okay, so we've got our ingredients. Now let's see how they were first mixed together. Because what happened next wasn't just about building a machine, it was about sparking a whole movement.
And this is the machine that started it all, the Altair 8800, back in 1975. Now, it wasn't some sleek, user-friendly thing you'd buy at a store. No, it was a kit you had to build yourself for about $439. But here's the thing. For the very first time, it put a real, programmable computer into the hands of hobbyists. There was just one massive problem. Telling it what to do? It was absolutely brutal. You literally had to sit there and flip all these little switches one by one just to enter a single command. Can you imagine? There had to be a better way. Now that better way? Well, it came from a tiny little startup you might have heard of, a company called Microsoft. Their very first product was a program that let people use a simple language called BASIC. All of a sudden, you didn't have to flip a million switches. You could just type simple, almost English-like commands like the ones you see here. I know it looks simple, but believe me, this was an absolute game changer.
So this breakthrough with BASIC just poured gasoline on the fire. It supercharged the shift from clunky hobby kits to actual products for consumers, and it all came to a head in one landmark year, 1977.
And what's so cool about this moment, about 1977, is that you have three different companies all making completely different bets on what they thought people wanted. You had Apple, and they went all in on features, color, sound, expandability. Then there was Radio Shack. Their TRS-80 was all about accessibility. A lower price, and you could just walk into any Radio Shack and buy one. And finally, Commodore's PET. Its bet was on simplicity. It was an all-in-one design that looked more like a friendly appliance than some scary piece of tech.
But a cool machine is one thing. What can it actually do for you? That's the real question. And this leads us to one of the most important concepts in the entire history of technology, something that took these early PCs from just being cool toys to absolute must-have tools.
It's a concept called the killer app. So what is that? Well, a killer app is that one piece of software that is so incredibly useful, so compelling, that people will go out and buy the expensive hardware just to run that one program. And for the Apple II, the killer app was about to completely change the world of business, forever.
And that program was called VisiCalc. It was the world's very first electronic spreadsheet. Now before this, if you worked in business, you used these giant paper ledgers. If you had to change just one number, you had to erase and recalculate everything by hand. It was tedious, slow, and super prone to errors. VisiCalc, it just automated the whole shebang. Change one number, and boom, the entire spreadsheet recalculated instantly. Literally overnight, this single program turned the Apple II from a cool gadget for hobbyists into an absolutely essential tool for business.
Well, as you can imagine, the massive success of the Apple II and VisiCalc, it didn't go unnoticed. In fact, it got the attention of the biggest giant in the room, IBM. And when they decided to enter the market in 1981, it wasn't just a big deal. It was a seismic event. It created this fundamental split, a difference in philosophy that we're still dealing with today. See, instead of trying to build everything from scratch themselves, the way Apple did, IBM did, something truly radical for the time. They went with what's called an open architecture approach. They used standard off-the-shelf parts from other companies, like an Intel CPU. They didn't even write their own operating system. They licensed it from that little startup, Microsoft. And this is the most important part. They published all the technical details. They basically gave the world the blueprints to their own computer.
What this did was create this incredible snowball effect. It's a concept we now call network effects. The idea is pretty simple. The platform becomes more valuable as more people use it. Because anyone could make stuff for the IBM PC, this massive ecosystem just exploded. Soon you had companies like Compaq and Dell building clones, cheaper, sometimes even better machines that ran all the same software. This flood of cheap hardware and new software attracted more users, which in turn attracted even more developers to make more software, and you can see how the snowball just got bigger and bigger.
So right here, this is the great divide. This is the big strategic choice. On one side, you have IBM's open model. It led to total market dominance, tons of choice, tons of innovation. The downside? It could be messy, inconsistent, a little fragmented. And on the other side, you had Apple. They kept everything closed, they controlled the hardware, they controlled the software. The result? A super tight, high-quality, consistent experience. This, right here, is the beginning of the whole Mac versus PC war.
So let's just take a breath and recap that incredible first decade. It's wild how fast things moved. We started in 1975 with a kit for hobbyists. Just 2 years later, in 77, we have the Trinity, the first real computers for consumers. Then in 79, VisiCalc arrives, the first killer app, and it makes the Apple II a must-have. 81, IBM jumps in and changes the game with its Open PC. And then in 84, Apple answers back with the Macintosh, introducing the world to the graphical user interface, the windows and icons and mouse we all take for granted today. What an amazing 10 years.
And that brings us to a final question, something to really think about. This whole battle, this open versus closed fight, it didn't end back in the 80s. I mean, think about it. It's the exact same debate we have today with Android versus iOS, right? Or Windows versus Mac OS. It is still the fundamental conflict in all of tech. And that makes it a really powerful idea to discuss with your students. Just have them look at the phones in their pockets. Who really won? It's a great conversation to have. Thanks so much for joining me.